Hey, this is Dave from the Adobe Character Animator team, and welcome to the June 2017 episode of Tips and Tricks. Today, as usual, we're going to get started with the Community Spotlight, showcasing some of the best new characters and techniques and tips from users like you. Then we'll move into the walk behavior. A couple months ago, we released the new walk behavior, latest release of Adobe Character Animator, and a lot of you have been using it. Here's a few tips and pointers to help you optimize walking for best results, including a really easy way to turn a character with one view into 3 different views. Then we'll move on to, last month we did a Meet This Team live stream, and we had multiple puppets, 3 puppets at a time, talking back and forth. So I'll walk through how we set that up and kind of best practices for setting up a multi-puppet live stream workflow. And finally, we'll finish up with dissecting a complicated puppet. Evans the Robot is a free example puppet that anyone can download, but if you just download them and look at the puppet panel, the rigging, it's a little scary. So I'm gonna spend about 15 minutes walking through some of the more complicated features of this character, and hopefully it'll help you add some new features and functionality to your own puppets. So that's it for this month, so let's get started. It's always great seeing Character Animator used for more long-form content, and one of the best recent examples of that I've seen is Future Frank. This is a series created by Chris Florence, and he's done several 20-minute episodes that have aired on their local broadcast television station, in addition to being online, and it's got this great Adult Swim style to it, and just, funny characters with funny voices and just off-the-wall storylines, and it's a great workflow. They create the character, they write the script, and then they film each character, record each character performance individually in Character Animator, and then composite them all together with backgrounds and multiple characters in After Effects. So it just goes to show, if you wanted to make your own, South Park style or Adult Swim style, animated show, it's totally possible with this kind of workflow. So great work, guys, and looking forward to the future episodes you make. And of course, it wouldn't be a tips and tricks video without showing off something new from the Look Studios guys in the UK. This time they're working on, they worked on this example character for our last release. And this is a free example character anyone can download on our examples page, and has a lot of really cool features, and it's a great insight into creating a really complicated character. So this character is particularly made for video game streaming, and they've actually shown examples on their website where he's playing Rocket League in the corner on Twitch or something like that. So it's very cool to see him in action and actually working. They've actually even hooked him up to a projector as well and done some experiments with him floating as a transparent character, which is fun to see as well. But he's got a lot of key triggers that can make him, move all these different levers and things by pressing keys, so it looks like he's controlling, the game. And little secrets like Q makes a little tentacle alien come out. And then, of course, in games, you want to show a wide variety of emotions. So he has, angry and surprised and happy and kind of sad, and all these different expressions as you go through it, which is great for, a streamer in a particular moment. They're feeling great or sad or angry or whatever. It's one key trigger away to turn your character into something like that. So download this character, take it apart, see how they made things, and thanks again, Look Studios, for your help on this awesome example puppet. We've worked with illustrator Kevin McMahon in the past for some of the example characters in Character Animator, and he's got this new character he created, Ronan, who's got a lot of really cool little features that you might not notice right away. So number one, the mouth is really well done, and notice it's not just the mouth that's changing, it's each mouth layer actually also includes the jaw and kind of the cheeks, this whole area around the mouth, and that really helps sell the talking effect and the voice, the whole mouth movement. It's not just swapping in and out shapes, it also makes it feel like the jaw is moving up and down, which is really nicely done. Secondly, he's got these really subtle head turns. So they're only moving, I think he said, 5 pixels at a time, but it does add a little bit of extra life to the character and a little extra dimension and movement. And he's doing some nice things with the ears kind of occluding behind the, behind the cheekbones and that sort of thing. So just really nice to see these really small, subtle details, but they really add up to a very expressive character. I also like his smile a lot. And so Kevin has used this character as a narrator for some tutorial videos he's done for designdojo.org. And he does this it's a great way to use Character Animator, is to have a animated narrator character taking you through a tutorial of some sort. And in this case, he has a really good job of, in After Effects, transitioning between the character talking full screen and then moving into this little circle in the corner where he continues to talk and narrate. And so you have this visual frame of reference, this anchor that's keeping you interested and engaged in the person telling the story. But then you've also got the screenshots happening behind him, and he's able to talk through it. So it's a really great character and really great technique for doing a tutorial style video. I love the idea of a company turning their logo into an animated character, and that's exactly what True Staff did. This is a recruiting and staffing company from Cincinnati, Ohio, and thanks to Ginger Linton and Jamie Freyer, they created this logo Staffy that they brought to life with Character Animator and mixed it with a live video, kind of doing a tour around their office. And they put it out there on Facebook, and it was a huge success. They got over 14,000 views, 150 plus likes, 79 shares. So they saw a lot of engagement from it and felt it was a big success for them. And now they've got that character rigged and ready to go. So they're planning to do some live streams and some future things with him as well. So just a very kind of novel and fun way to bring a logo to life. So our last example today comes to us from Mike Carroll, and this is a character that he created in 3D Studio Max and then exported into Photoshop and tagged and named and organized everything correctly to create the character that you see here. Now, the really cool thing about this is he is selling this puppet on turbosquid.com. Now, TurboSquid is traditionally a 3D model site where people buy and sell 3D models, but he asked if it was okay to sell his .puppet file from Character Animator, and they said yeah. So it's awesome to see the marketplace expanding, and we're seeing more and more places where people can buy Character Animator puppets. There is a need for them out there. People want to make videos with an anonymous, resistance style mask and be able to really quickly perform with it. And sites like this and artists like Mike are giving people that option, which is just great to see. So by now, hopefully you've had a chance to play around with the walk behavior and experiment adding locomotion to your different creations. Here's a few tips and tricks about some things you can do with it that you might not have tried yet. So for example, a really simple character like this doesn't have any arms, legs, anything like that, but you can still add walk and control it moving left and right using the walk behavior. So if with this character, if I go into rig mode, I've got the top level grouped character selected here. I will go to plus under behaviors, add the walk behavior. I'm going to change start from immediately to left and right arrow keys, and I'll change the body speed to 100%. And then I'll just go to my character here, the whole character, select it, and I'm going to tag the whole character as waist. And doing that, that's all I have to do, and now the whole body moves left and right as I press the left and right arrow keys. And he's got a little bit of bounce to him. That bounce will change depending on the style that you've picked. So run will move faster, slump will do it, a bigger bounce, that sort of thing. So this is a really easy way to move really simple characters, or characters if their legs are off of the screen. You don't have to rig the whole character. Maybe you just want to do this for their top torso, and that should work just fine. All right, so if you've tried rigging a character with the walk behavior, you have probably run into this before, I'm going to guess. So I can move my character to the right or the left. I've just got one view, but then if I stop and I'm not pressing anything, he kind of just pivots around because he doesn't have a fixed position. You don't want to fix the feet or keep them pinned down because you want those feet to be able to walk, right, and move. So the way you remedy this is by creating different views. But if you're doing a really simple character like this, it may feel tedious to create, these multiple views for a character when all you really want him to do is just stand still here. Luckily, there's a pretty easy workaround with a simple character like this. So let's go to rig mode and see what happens. Okay, so I've got my guy, Mr. Blue here, and he's got a head and a body, just like I would expect. I'm gonna select both of these and go to Puppet Group Layers. And that's going to create a group that includes my head and my body. Then I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate, or that's Command D on Mac or Control D on Windows. And I'm basically going to create 3 different versions. I've duplicated my head and my body in 3 different groups. This first one, I'm going to press enter to rename it and just call this default. I'm going to do the second one and call this right profile. And the third one, I'll call left profile. Okay, so default, this is when we want him to be standing still. And so what I'm going to do there is first I'll go in and I'm going to remove the independence from the legs because I don't want those legs to be able to move on their own. I kind of want in this default view for them to be pinned down. And then I'll go and select my body group and I'm just going to add a stick here in the feet and tag that as fixed. So that should keep the feet fixed to the ground when the default view shows up. Now I'm going to go to the right profile and I'm going to tag that as right profile. And I'll do the same for left profile and tag that as left profile. Now the difference is with the left profile, I want them facing the other way. So I'm actually going to select that, go up to my layer properties over here, and in X scale, type -100. And that's going to give me basically the same artwork, but facing the other way. And I'm just going to drag him using the arrow tool here, just so it looks like his feet are kind of lining up correctly. If I have him too far to the side, then when he switches views, you're going to see a bit of a jump as he transitions between views. So this is probably going to be best, something like that. All right, so let's go back to stream mode and see how this looks. All right, so now I've got my character and he is standing still. His feet are fixed to the ground in this default position. When I press right, he starts moving to the right, he stops again, and when I press left, he flips around and goes the other way. Now when I stop, he is going to flip, when I go from left and let go, he is going to flip back to that right position because that is what I've set as the default position. Whatever is not tagged as left or right profile, which in this case is the group that I call default, that is what's going to show up when I'm not pressing any buttons. But this is a really easy way to get a character with 3 views. Basically, you just draw the first view with the head and the body, and then flip it around for the other way, and then fix the feet, take out the independence of the legs, and add the fixed stick in the feet for the last one. And that's a really easy and quick way to get a 3-view character for a walk cycle. This is a small tip, but a helpful one, particularly if you care about where your character's feet are connecting with the ground. The way the character animator determines where the ground is for a walk cycle is where your lowest handle is. So in most cases, that's probably going to be the right heel or the heel and the toe, either the right heel and right toe or the left heel and toe. And so whichever one of these are lowest, that's going to determine where that line for the floor is for calculating how the feet connect to the ground. So just something to consider as you're kind of lining up your different pieces in your composition. Now we told you guys that the walk behavior is optimized for characters with 2 feet, 2 legs. Of course, some of you completely ignored that and have started doing characters with more than 2 legs, which is fine. I've gotten a few questions about it, and while it isn't optimized for that sort of thing, there is a way to experiment with this sort of stuff. So I've got my character Aquavel, the alien here, and if I press left or right, he starts moving to the left or the right and does this little walk behavior with all 4 tentacles moving at the same time. So let's see how this sort of thing is set up. Okay, so here's the thing you have to understand about the walk behavior. It's looking for the first instance of every tag, and just that first instance. If you added more than 1 left knee, if you had 5 left knees, it's going to ignore all the other ones. It's only going to look for the first one that it finds in this list. So here we go. So I've got a left leg here, and I've labeled this left knee, and left and right are kind of relative in a tentacled monster world. But I basically said where I think the knee and the heel and the toe, I approximated where I think those things would be, and this you can experiment with and see what works best for your character, and that's fine. And same with the right leg here. This is the first instance of these right tags, so right knee, right ankle, all of that. But then when I move to this other left leg, now, this left knee is going to get ignored by the walk behavior because it already has found a left knee, so it doesn't need another one to add to the equation. So what you're going to have to do to make that leg also work is you would have to add an additional walk behavior to it right over here. So I would have to select that group, go to behaviors plus walk, and add a walk behavior specifically for that leg. And I did the exact same thing for the other right leg as well. And that way, you're basically running multiple versions of the walk behavior. Now, you're going to want to make sure all your parameters are pretty much the same, because if they're not, you'll run into situations where one leg looks slower than the others, or worst case scenario, it actually detaches from the character and walks away and goes off, which can be cool for some characters, but probably for most, you want it to stay with the body and at the same place. So that's the basic takeaway. If you're adding more than one right or left limb, add additional walk behaviors to make that work. Last month, the whole Character Animator team met up in Seattle to plan for some new features in the future, and we felt this was a great opportunity for us to get together and do a live Meet the Team streaming event. So if you wanted to do something similar, here's how we set up our live stream. We had 3 MacBook Pros all running Character Animator. And we also all had NDI for Adobe Creative Cloud and the NDI Scan Converter plugins as well. Then we hooked them all up to a wall outlet that had the 4 Ethernet ports. Now, you don't have to hook everything up into the same port if you're on the same local area network or a hub or a modem or something like that. It should be okay. But for our instance, we were on this big conference room. We were kind of spread out around it, and we had these long wires all linked in to the same local area network. Now, because of that, that allowed me on my kind of master control computer to see the other 2 computers show up as sources in Wirecast. So I had an external monitor hooked up to my laptop running Wirecast, which is the software we use to stream onto YouTube. And that allowed me to see each of those computers show up as NDI sources. Now, I saw them come up as each computer came in as 2 sources, one for the video and one for the audio. And so I brought all of those in and then was able to composite them together into a scene using Wirecast. And there's plenty of tutorials online for Wirecast if you're interested in that more. That'll go much more into depth in it than I can. And that is how we did it. And so each laptop had multiple characters on it, multiple puppets, and we would swap in and out of different characters by just kind of switching off and on with the characters. And I would fade them out in Wirecast while we transitioned and then fade them back in. We also all had our own headset mics, so we would be able to only pick up our own voice for the lip sync for each character, but still be able to hear ourselves because we were all in the same room. We were just in different corners, so it was loud enough that we could hear each other and understand each other, but the microphone would only pick up what was right in front of it. And so this works pretty well for us. This is, just one way to do it. I'm sure there are countless other ways to do this sort of thing, but this was our particular setup. And the biggest thing I would say is if you're doing a live event like this, you can't underestimate the amount of time you'll need for setting things up and testing. Audio alone, getting all the levels right of all these characters talking back and forth and not being too loud or too soft, that takes an enormous amount of time to get just right. And same with just the compositing and making sure everyone's the right size and their heads aren't getting clipped off or anything like that. So give yourself ample time to set up and practice and be ready to go, and that will help lead you to a successful live event. But it was a lot of fun. We hope to do more of these in the future, and thanks to everyone who showed up for the Meet the Team event, and again, we hope to do more soon. So this is a free character that I created for the NAB conference for our last release of Character Animator, Evans the Robot. And so he's free for you to download and check out. But if you did that and started to dig into him, you may wonder why all this crazy stuff is happening. And it can feel a little overwhelming to open up such a complicated puppet at first glance. So what I'm going to try to do is break down some parts of him into more manageable bite-sized chunks to understand some specific actions that I did to him. So I'm going to focus on 3 things in particular. Number 1, he's got a lot of blinking lights and movement to him. So notice his screen changes. The lights on his head and his body flicker and turn on and off. His eyes glow a little bit. So there's all these little things that kind of give him this kinetic live feeling. The second thing is that his hands can turn into weapons. So if I put his claw up here and press the 0 key, that transforms it into this hand cannon, and then I can shoot out lightning bolts or fire or both at the same time. And if I press 0 again, it turns back into a regular claw. And then with his other hand, if I press the U key, his claw kind of opens up and becomes the hilt of this sword that appears. And then I can go back in like that. So that's the second thing, kind of these arms changing into different weapons. And then the third thing is completely replacing the head. If I press the 1 key, his whole head opens up, the smoke appears on the side, and we have a whole secondary face with eyes and eyebrows that work and can get angry or worried as well. And then if I press 1 again, the smoke happens and the head goes back and closes to do the original head. So let's dig in a little deeper to those 3 things and go into rig mode. All right, so let's start with the lights. Throughout this character, I have a bunch of groups inside his head and his body called things like blue light, orange light, red light, green light, and then the same thing down here in the body. Now, if I double click on any of these, I'll go into kind of the isolated mode, and you can see all these are just a few layers of just these color overlays. So, if I isolate, you'll see that this first layer is just these 2 dots, and then it skips to these 2, and then to these 2 marks. And all I'm doing with these is overlaying them on top of particular features of the character. So a certain dial or a little button or things like that. And then under layer, I've got the blending mode set to linear dodge add, which gives them a nice glow effect. So if I turn that off, I just do normal, notice that the blue kind of just got dull and it doesn't glow as much. So for a robot character, it looks really nice to do something like the add blend mode, which makes it just feel like it's glowing a little bit. So pretty much all these light groups are just collections of 3 different positions for the dots to be in, and they've all got linear dodge add at the top group level. And then at that same group level, notice I've got the little Lego brick icon here, which means a behavior has been added to it. And you'll see over in the behaviors column, I have added the cycle layers behavior. And I set this to just start immediately, go top to bottom. And then I picked a frame, advance every frames that is a little bit longer than usual. Like normally you would do things pretty quick. You would want your frame by frame animations to maybe go every 1 or 2 frames. But here I'm having it instead advance, every 63 frames, or for this one, 52 frames, or this one, 41 frames. I just picked numbers and sequences to have them kind of go off at different times. So at any given moment, there's always kind of something happening. So I love using cycle layers as a timer. Basically, you can set these large, frame rates or advance every frame values, and then that allows you to create these actions that happen or reveal themselves over time. I do the same thing with the eyes. There's this group in the head called glow eyes, and that is a cycle layers behavior that advances every 67 frames. And it starts with just a blank layer, absolutely nothing happening. And then it has this layer called glow up, actually this group called glow up. And that in and of itself is actually a 5-frame sequence of the eyes getting a little bit brighter and glowing a little bit. And so I'm turning them all on at the same time, but you'll see here, this in and of itself has its own cycle layers that is moving 1 frame at a time and, finishing when it gets to the end. And then that continues for another 67 frames and stays as a basic glow state. And then there's a whole other sequence where they glow down and basically the transparency decreases and they go back to normal, and then I go back to a blank state. So I'm using multiple groups and multiple instances of cycle layers to create these glowing on and off and blinking effects. So think about your character. Now, not every character is going to be a robot with blinking lights on them, but think about if there's things you can do where a timer type system might make sense. So for example, in a live stream, you may want your character to do something interesting every 45 seconds or every few minutes to keep the viewer's attention. And so sometimes I'll do this with the eyelids. I might have a cycle layers treatment for the eyelids where I'll have the character squint every 30 seconds, or I'll have them kind of bring down their lower eyelid or something like that to just add to the variety every once in a while. So think about how that might affect your character. There's a lot of really cool ideas that you can do there. So next, let's take a closer look at the arm cannon and the sword that come out. So in my left arm group, I've got another group called Claw. And Claw has a couple of things in it. It's got a default state, which is just, what you would normally see, and that doesn't have any key triggers assigned to it. It has a closed state, which if I turn this on instead of default, you'll see it's just the same thing drawn again with the claws kind of clenched together. And that's triggered by the 9 key. And you can see that over here in the trigger column too. So anytime I press 9, that is going to show up. And I've got hide others in group checked, which means when closed is pressed, only show closed. Don't show default, don't show weapon, just show closed. And so if I turn weapon on, notice this is triggered over here by the 0 key, and I have this set to latch because I don't want to always hold down the 0 key to have to show this. I want this to stay until I press 0 again. Latch is basically an on-off switch. So you press 0 once, and this cannon animation is going to start to play. And you'll see that I've also added the cycle layers behavior to this. So if I twirl open the weapon, it has this 14 frame animated sequence that's going to play of the weapon actually coming out. So let's double click into here. And there's a lot going on here, but let's only look at frame 1. So frame 1, we see a little bit of the thing. Frame 2, we see a little bit more. And 3 and 4. And all I did is in Photoshop, I kind of built up the cannon piece by piece and had layers kind of sliding in and out of each other, and then saved it as a new layer, duplicated it, added a new part coming under, and just kind of created my own frame-by-frame sequence just by moving things around. Now, on the very last frame, which has been set to kind of for it to stick on and hold on, that is a group in and of itself. So a final frame, any frame does not have to be a layer. A frame can be a group, and it could have its own cycle layers. It can have whatever you want. And so I've got several things in here, including the 2 animated sequences, the lightning bolt and the fire that come out. And if I turn those on, I should be able to see all of them and every frame of them at the same time. And so each of these can show up, and I don't have hide others in group or anything like that checked, so I can do them both at the same time if I wanted to. So basically when I press 0, the sequence goes all the way through 1, 3, 5, all the way up until 14. It sticks on 14. It now allows me to do the bolt and the fire. It's stuck there. And then when I press 0 again, it's going to go back, reverse through the sequence back to the original state. Now for the right arm, that's the one that the sword comes out, and it has a very similar idea. In my right arm group, I've got a group called claw, and the claw has 3 things: default, closed, which we saw before, and sword. And sword is a 6-frame animated sequence. So by default, this is what it looks like. But if I go to frame 1 of the animation, I've kind of opened it up a little bit, and I'm starting to show the sword coming out a little bit. And then number 2, it comes out a little bit more, and so on until you get to number 6. Now with the sword, because I wanted it to not be wobbly and keep it straight, I selected it, and I also added a stick by using the stick icon and just dragging where I want it to kind of stay solid. And that's going to help it have a little bit more structure and feel a little bit more metallic and rigid. So we see this commonly used with characters where, with their hand or a claw or whatever, they've got multiple substitutions inside to say, I'm pointing or I'm waving or I'm doing something else. But there's no reason that those couldn't also be little animated sequences. If you wanted your character to snap, or you wanted, fire to come out of their hands or something like that, you can store them all inside kind of this default folder, hand, claw, whatever you want to call it, and then use these different things to have, key triggered features to switch between. All right, so let's finish up with the face animation of it opening up and revealing the secondary face. Inside my head group, I've got a group called switch. And switch has 2 things inside of it, default and face 2. So default, as the name suggests, is the default face. There are no key triggers associated with it. It's not latched or hide others in group or anything like that. And so because of that, that's what's going to show up by default. Face 2, however, is triggered with the 1 key and has latch and hide others in group checked, meaning as soon as I press the 1 key and just tap it once, it's going to fall into place and basically hide anything else at the same level of it, which in this case is only one thing, the default face. So if I turn off default, and I've got this background layer that's basically just a basic template for the character, face 2 shows up. Now face 2 has a couple things going on with it. It's got a group called open cycle and then face number 2. So face number 2 is the same sort of thing, a basic face structure with eyebrows and eyes and the mouth and all of that stuff. And the mouths in this case are different little waveform symbols that I added to the character instead of regular, human mouth shapes. And then open cycle is like a 9 or 10 frame animation of the head opening up. And so this overlays on top of face number 2 and makes it look like it's opening up to reveal what's behind it. So if I double click on open cycle, you'll kind of get a better look at this. And if I just toggle through these, you'll see all I was doing in Photoshop was just taking the initial face I had and just kind of moving the different things to the side and adding this shadow, this darkness that keeps getting lighter and lighter until in the last layer, it finally reveals the face. And then when you reverse the animation, it's going to snap back into place and go back to that default face. So this sort of thing makes for a really smooth transition between things. If you can have a frame by frame animation where one thing transitions and opens up into something else, particularly if you layer things over top of each other, like this open cycle on top of this other face, that way you can kind of have this nice seamless flow between the two states. So always think about where's point A and where's point B? How are you going to get between the two? Usually the answer is some sort of cycle layers animation that you're triggering and do some sort of forward and reverse thing with that. Now you'll also notice at the same time that face 2 is pressed, which by the 1 key, I also have these 2 other layers, the smoke cycle on the top and smoke on the bottom. And these are both multi-frame sequences of smoke that comes out the side. And these each have cycle layers too. And they're all triggered with the 1 key. So one press, just by pressing 1, I'm actually triggering 3 things at once. I'm triggering the head opening up and then the smoke coming out as well. And then when I tap it again, it's going to do the same thing, except the open cycle is going to play in reverse, but the smoke is still going to come out and have this effect like some sort of steam is shooting out or something like that and causing this mechanical thing to happen. So hopefully that gives a little insight into how to create a more complicated character. I think when it comes down to it, it really comes down to 3 things. How you structure your character, so where all the groups are and how you're kind of organizing all of them. So like putting the different weapons inside the claw group or the 2 heads inside a switch group. Cycle layers, the ability to cycle between a frame by frame sequence, doing that quick or on a longer timer, and then key triggers and latching and hide others in group and all that stuff. Those 3 things, if you learn how to do all 3 of those, the sky's the limit. So play around with it. Again, this character is free for you to download and take apart and learn from. And I can't wait to see these techniques used in more characters out there in the wild. All right, that's it for this episode. Thanks everyone for watching. And you may have noticed I'm actually in a new office this time, and that's because they recently renovated our Adobe headquarters in San Jose, California. And so I've got a nice new space to work with. And then included, luckily they asked me to help with some of the decorations around the floor. So including a 29-foot wall that has a giant 16-frame walk cycle animation of Evans the robot. So that was fun to be a part of. There's also a few extra videos that I've done with Character Animator appearing outside of this channel, including Adobe Creative Cloud. That channel has the full NAB 2017 presentation that I did showing off all the new features of Character Animator, so check that out if you haven't already. And then also I recently did a live stream with Wirecast and talked about kind of the process of first joining Adobe and some of the early details of Character Animator in addition to walking through some of the new features there. So lots of cool stuff. Check it out. Those are in the video description show notes below. But other than that, if you have any questions, concerns, bug reports, feature requests, all that stuff, the best place to do that and ask is in the official Character Animator forums, where myself or someone else from the team will be happy to help you out. So that's it for today. Thanks again for watching and have fun.